Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Success in Women. I'm Linda,
I'm Andrea.
and today we have a really exciting topic. We're going to talk about spirits.
Ooh.
Spirits and the universe. And I think mainly because Halloween's around the corner and it just came to mind.
Yeah.
Anyway, but before we start in on the show, Andrew's got a tip.
Well, going along the lines of recycling again, the squeezable ketchup bottles and the mayonnaise bottles, anything that has like a little small squeezable spout on it. Once they're empty, you wash them out. And what I like to use it for is to make pancakes. So you fill up the container with the pancake mix. You can use a funnel. And then when you squeeze it onto the griddle, comes out a perfect circle.
Boy, that is fantastic. And all the times I'm trying to pour out my pancake from, maybe a big measuring spoon or the big spoon from the bowl and making a mess.
It's dripping everywhere.
Everywhere.
And then you got different little legs coming out and it makes a mess on the counter, on the griddle.
Everywhere.
And this is just perfect. Once you put
Almost
it in
like
that
professional.
Yes. Once you
Wow.
put it in that squeezable bottle, you're good to go.
Yeah, and it's funny because over the years I've seen commercials where they have certain things to squeeze it out, and
Right.
restaurants would have that.
Right.
But you don't need to buy anything professional.
right.
You have these containers in your fridge.
Exactly. And you save
Yeah.
on the, what do they say? The carbon footprint.
Yep, yep. It all makes a difference.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about spirits, and Andrew's going to kind of lead into the conversation of spirits because she's had a number of situations that have happened in her life, and I'll tell you a little bit about my experiences. But Andrea, why don't you start with something that's happened to you? And I like that little story that you had, just even in that one example. But you know that there's been many things, but this was an obvious one.
An obvious one. And, the thing is, when you lose somebody, it's always sad. Some are sadder than others. If you lose a parent, they're elderly, you say to yourself, well, it's time. But if you lose a child or a spouse, it can be very disrupting in your life. Some people can never move on from it. They're hurting all the time. But you're hurting because you think they're gone for good. You'll never see them again. And I find that I don't believe that. I believe that they're still around. They're still watching over you. And if you look for the signs, you'll see it and you'll hear it and you'll feel it. And one really good example was after my father had passed away, and I had watched him for about 6 months. I had moved home, and it was very hard to lose him. But so when I came home, I was driving one day in my car, and my father would get so upset if we would get angry or speak out in anger or swear. That was like a no-no in front of my dad. So one day I'm driving in my car, and at that time, so we're talking about 13, 14 years ago, I had a CD holder on my sun visor, and it was Velcroed to this, and I had all my CDs in there, and it's been there for a couple of years.
Right. A lot of people had that in the old days.
When we used to have CD
Yes.
players. And so I'm driving, and I'm changing lanes, and this guy cuts me off. And oh, did I get mad. It just frightened me, and I said, oh, you blah, 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 blah. All of a sudden, every CD in that holder fell into my lap. I was stunned. Everything fell in my lap, and I looked up and I just went, okay, Dad, I'm sorry. But it never happened before, never happened again. To me, I took it as my father giving me, proper hell for being angry and swearing. And that was just one of the many things that I have had happen with different loved ones. And not only that, things that I felt upset about or worried about, and I would get a sign. And especially like when we moved here, I was so upset about moving from our other home. And at that home, we had these 2 rabbits that used to always come in our backyard every day. And I was there, and I knew the people were going to completely renovate, and I didn't know what was going to happen to those rabbits. And I was very depressed about moving. It was during COVID, the whole bit. The first night we got here, first of all, I was sitting outside and just contemplating everything. And these birds started chirping. And I heard their chirp say to me, "We are here, we are here, we are here." And I thought, am I hearing things? I called my daughters out. I said, come here, listen, listen. Do you hear what I'm hearing? And they're going, yeah, kind of. They didn't want to believe it either. And then the next morning when I woke up, 2 rabbits in my backyard.
Holy moly.
2 rabbits.
Wow.
I said to myself, thank you.
If that's not a sign, I don't know what is.
It calmed me down. My worries were gone. And I felt so happy to be in this home.
Wow.
But you have to take it for what it really is. Don't just say, oh yeah, like my husband would say, oh yeah, coincidence. No. I don't believe in coincidences. I believe things happen for a reason.
And it's interesting because what you were getting signs of was a spirit, but you'll get other signs in life, the universe making certain events happen that is almost impossible if you planned it out as to every fine detail that you could possibly do. You couldn't possibly make certain things happen, but yet some things will come together naturally. But lots of events have happened to get you to that spot.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And it's kind of like, for me, I feel like that's why I believe so strongly in what's meant to be. And even at the time when I sold my house, and I sold my house during COVID as well, and I moved into my condo where I am today. But up until that point, something was keeping me there. But I knew I needed to move. I knew that it wasn't home. And I had been there for over 20 years. But since my husband and I had split up and I had been there for many years on my own, I'd never felt the right time. And yet, during COVID, when certain things were going on, the universe made everything happen exactly to the point when the people that bought the house, I mean, they didn't move into it, at least not initially. I don't know if they have now. It's almost 2 years. I have never been back. But the thing is, even when they came and they offered and the stuff that they wanted included, but everything came exactly the way it was supposed to. And within 3 weeks, that was it. It was done. But the universe brought it all happening.
And you have to tell them also, you had the house up for sale a few times.
I did.
And it didn't happen. But this time, it was the right time and the right people.
And the right price.
And the right
price. Because that's the other thing. You're right. I had put it up a few times, but I really wasn't sure that I really wanted to move at that point because I loved the house. I loved my view. I just didn't love the area that I lived in. And it was because it was kind of lonely. It was like out in the boonies, in my opinion. Even though it was a nice waterfront property, it was a small waterfront property. My ex-husband used to call it the pond because it wasn't much bigger than a pond, but it was a lakefront.
It's nice.
And so it was pretty. And yet, even at one point, my neighbor had come knocking on my door, wanted to buy the house. And we had a verbal agreement to actually him to buy and me to sell. And he really wanted the house, except that he couldn't sell his house. And he had a much bigger house. And it was a great house, especially for families, because it was on a court, everything. But for whatever reason, his house didn't sell. And if his house didn't sell, he didn't want to buy mine because he didn't want to do the bridging. But luckily, that all happened again because even at that time, it wasn't that many years before I sold it in 2020, where the price almost doubled from what I had agreed to with him.
Exactly.
He unfortunately lost out. I ended up, doing a lot better than I had originally expected, but then nobody knew house prices would go through the roof. And even then, if I held on a few more months, I would have even got more money because they literally took off at that point. But I didn't care. Everything kind of worked out the way it was supposed to. And even at that time, Andrea, the prices were, I think, continuing to go up. Before, when I first had it listed, to the point where I sold it, that made a big price difference for me. That again, the universe made it happen when it was supposed to.
Right. And you have to listen for those things
Yeah.
too. It's you have to be patient and wait. Like I know people want things to happen quickly, or they force things. I always say if it's forced, it's not meant to be. You'll go through all kinds of heartache and whatever, and it might fall through anyways. But if it's the right timing, and it's happened so many times for me, for the right timing, and you just be patient and you wait. And I've moved quite a few times, many times, and we've always had a house up for sale, and a couple of times my husband was ready to sign a paper, and I said, I don't feel right about it. Let's just wait. You'd be upset, but then it turned out I had a feeling, and it was
See,
a
that's
better
your gut
timing.
instinct as
Yes,
well.
yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that you really do have to pay attention
You
to.
do.
There's a reason. And even it's one of those things, Andrea, when you were talking about, getting cut off and getting, first instinct is to get angry with the other driver.
Right.
But how do you know that even with that? So yes, you got angry and you realized that, your dad didn't approve of that. But how do you know that that wasn't saving you from something else?
Right. Well, that's what I say too. Like I always say to people, if you're late getting out the door, don't worry about it, because that might be, I'm going to say God for me, telling you that there's something happening that I don't want you involved with.
Right.
And the one time my daughter, they were coming back from Buffalo, her and her friend, and they got tied up at the border. And my daughter was so upset, as anybody would be, because you want to get going, you want to get past, but they want to check your bags and everything. And there was nothing wrong, just took time. So they finally got that all, and they got on the road. Well, just before they got to, I think, Oakville, somewhere in Burlington, a humongous accident. And it had just happened within 20 minutes. And Sarah just was like, wow, if we hadn't have been detained, we could have been in that accident. So those are the things that you have to appreciate. Don't get angry at every little thing. And like you said, I shouldn't have got angry. And that was probably a point in my life too, where I thought, wow, I better be careful and watch what I'm doing and saying. And a lot of times I'll feel something happening, and I'm starting to worry or something, and something will calm me down very quickly.
There's some presence.
Yeah, a song comes on, or you'll pick up something. There'll be a saying, especially on Facebook. There's all kinds of quotes, and it's not a coincidence that a quote will come out that'll be dealing with exactly how you're feeling.
That's true. And I remember one of our friends from childhood, she was saying when her parents passed away, and I can't remember if it was the mom or the dad, but there were times when she kind of felt stressed about something, and she said she always associated butterflies with her parent. I can't remember which one it was, but she said all of a sudden the butterfly would show up, and she'd say, I felt like they were saying it's going to be okay. Whatever it was going to be okay. Because it would always come at the right time in her life, that it was like...
Yeah, it's not coincidental, yeah. Well, and my daughter was at a indigenous, I don't know if it was a park or somewhere they went, and there was a lot of, they were getting teaching on the indigenous, and they were talking about spirits, and how they really believe in animal spirits and whatnot. And one thing that I've always associated with my dad is a hawk. And because I had, a year after my father passed, I went to a medium, I guess you would say. And what she had told me and what she had said was unbelievable. But he was everywhere. He seemed to be everywhere. And I thought to myself, okay, if he knew that was happening and that was happening, which they were, how did he get there? So he must be flying, He's got obviously spirits fly, but So I said, you know what? Maybe he's a hawk, because my father would have been like that. He was strong and like a king almost. So I always associate him with a hawk, and so obviously I see a lot when I'm traveling or whatever. And actually, one time, and I had told Eddie about this, and he laughed. But one time we were driving to Florida, and without a word of a lie, a hawk flew so close to our windshield.
Wow.
It could have hit us. And Eddie was like, oh my God. And I go, well, you know who that was? He goes, yeah, your dad. But anyway, so this, my daughter was telling this person about how I felt. And she said, that's how they manifest themselves to you, because what you believe, they manifest themselves in a way that you believe it's them. So the butterflies,
yes.
She felt they were butterflies, so they showed themselves as butterflies. I feel my dad as a hawk. He shows himself as a hawk. So that's the things you have to look for. And I know a lot of people say, oh yeah, sure, right. But it happens more often than not. So I truly, truly believe in spirits, and that
I
they
do
show
too.
themselves.
And the thing is, I guess throughout life, and it depends on what religion you are, if you are religious at all, they've talked about, like, we're not alone here.
Right.
And if you believe that there's something on the other side kind of thing, it's actually helpful, because
yes,
when you lose somebody that's very important in your life, you have to know that they're still here, they're still with you. And if you need to talk to them, you can talk to them, because somehow they're going to show you that they're here to help you. They're here to support you. That you're never alone, really.
Right.
And
even in dreams,
in dreams in particular.
They come to you in dreams.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I've had so many times, especially my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, they come to me a lot. And I remember one time, I don't know what was going on, same thing, and I had dreamt of my father-in-law, and he'd been gone for he's 40 some years. And I came into the house and he was standing there, and I said, what are you doing here? And he goes, what do you mean? I'm always here. And I woke up.
Oh my God.
I thought, oh wow. So he was telling me, don't worry.
Yeah.
I'm here. I've always been here.
Well, I always felt like that with my father.
Goosebumps.
Yeah, I know, right? But and it's interesting. Like my younger sister, she loves Halloween, and all of the ghosts and spirits and everything else that she can conjure up with it. It's all part of who she is, and it's interesting, because anytime that I really need my dad, I always feel like he's there ready to help me. So I'll talk to my dad all the time, and my dad's been gone since 1974. Right. That's a lot of years, but I never ever felt like he was gone.
Right.
I know I don't get to see him, but I always feel him. And
isn't that nice?
Yeah, because
and it can be comforting. So
it really
for
is.
People who are suffering from that, talk to the person. They will bring you comfort and peace somehow. I truly believe that.
Yep. And so it's why if you look at greeting cards, and recently we had a death, not in my family, but in somebody very close. And when you start reading the greeting cards, you're never alone, and they've never really left you. And it's not just the memories that you have, but it's everything. It's their presence. You do feel their presence. And if you can open your mind and your heart to that, you haven't really lost that person.
That's right.
In the physical, yes.
Yes.
But never in the spirit.
No.
And that's why even, whether people get buried or cremated or put in a crypt, the fact is the spirit leaves the body when they pass.
Right.
And that's why it's always with you.
Right.
And so whatever you do with the remains, that's just what the body that you had while you were on Earth.
Yeah. And another way of feeling them is, for me, Eddie's mother lived with us my whole entire married life. So I have a lot of her belongings, and like her pots and her pans. And she used to use these big honkin' pots to make her sauce. And now when I do my hams, I use those pots. And so when I'm using them, the moment I touch them, she comes to my mind. And I think about all the happy thoughts with those plots. And a lot of times Sarah and I will say, oh, if Nona could see this, oh, if Nona was that. And it brings great memories and great comfort.
Yes.
And you should try that if you're feeling down and low. You know, find an article or look at a picture and remember a moment when it was really fun and happy.
And actually, it's a good thing that you put it that way, because sometimes when you need just some time for yourself is going back down memory lane, remembering all those times that you had, that you enjoyed that particular person, whether it's a parent, a grandparent, if it was a child, whatever. But it will help bring you peace that hopefully helps you in the rest of your life, being comforted to know, again, you don't walk this journey alone. That's whether you
right.
feel like you are or not. And that's why you don't need another person. If you're single like me, not settling for somebody just because you feel like you're alone all the time, because we never really walk alone.
No.
Besides the spiritual friends and family that are with me, then we have our other friends,
our physical
friends that are here with us.
That's
and so
right.
If you ever need somebody, there's always somebody there to help you with that journey that you're going to take.
Yes.
And
don't be afraid to reach out.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
Either talk to a spirit. I could do it all the time. I'll say, hey, Mom, or hey, Dad, or talk to a friend. You know
it's
there's no shame in any of it.
Right. And in the old days, they'd say, well, if you talked out loud, then, people thought you were crazy. Listen, I talk out loud all the time to people that are not actually in the room. But
or even to myself. I'll say, Andrea, smarten up.
But you're not crazy. And you can do that, and you can feel good about it, because it does help you.
Yeah.
And you don't want to keep things bottled up inside
That's
you.
Right.
And it prevents you from moving forward in whatever your journey is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, don't be afraid to talk to friends about, how you feel about losing someone. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, yeah, I don't want to bother you. And it's not a bother. Sometimes, if you say today, I was thinking about my husband or my mom or my dad. And then we could start talking about moments that we had together, especially if you're close friends. Like you knew my mother. And if I was to go visit her mom, we always say a few things about my mom and all the good times they had. And you laugh and you feel better.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like they're really gone like they are. It's just, again, their physical body's gone, but not their spirit.
They've left a lot behind.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we hope that even just, reminiscing about these spirits and the universe and all the stuff that maybe you believe and maybe you don't is a little helpful. Again, then maybe you can share,
like,
and subscribe, because ladies, we can't do it without you. I'm Linda.
And I'm Andrea.
And this is Success in Women. We're here for you. And until next time.
Bye, ladies.